The cost of conflict is to feel incredibly uncomfortable, but the cost of not facing conflict can be huge. Conflict comes from the Latin for striking together, and that means that we associate it with clashes, with impact, and of course that often means we also associate it with pain and discomfort. I have built my whole business on the idea of creating more rewarding working relationships. Today I'm going to share with you 3 situations of conflict avoidance that I have found myself in. I'm going to explain to you what happened, why I avoided the conflict, the price I paid for that, and what I learned from that situation. Imagine a meeting of senior people. Conversation is about targets, performance of the organisation. Things aren't going so well. Then a very senior person in the room locks onto a target and fires. And I don't mean they fire one shot, it's more machine gun. Like the shots just keep coming. It's personal, it's nasty, and you know what I did? Absolutely nothing. So why do we avoid that kind of conflict? Why didn't I stand up and say, hang on a minute, that's not okay? Well, there's lots of reasons why we avoid that kind of conflict situation. First of all, I didn't want to be shot down as the next person. And actually we tell ourselves excuses. I told myself the excuse that these were all senior people and pressure's normal. And, you should be able to handle it. And actually there was also an element of shock. I totally hadn't seen that coming. And I was completely paralysed in the moment and unsure how to tackle it. But there was a cost. The cost was guilt. I felt guilty after the event that I hadn't stood up and said anything. There were trust issues. There were other people in the room looking at each other, wondering why nobody else stepped in. And of course the biggest cost is that this is how things are around here. And as is often the case with these things, that will have gone underground. Now imagine a completely different situation. I have a work colleague. I don't know incredibly well, but it's a good enough relationship. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just okay. A third person comes to me and says, that first person that I thought I had a good relationship with is really unhappy with me. Apparently I arrived in a meeting that we were both in, lots of people were there, and I completely ignored her. I took no notice of her, I walked straight past her, it was disrespectful and it was rude. I felt completely misunderstood. Here was this conflict situation that she was now in conflict with me, and I didn't even realise I'd done anything wrong. And you know what I did? I pretended I didn't know. So why did I avoid this conflict situation? Part of me said, I should rise above this. I don't have to deal with this kind of rubbish. I've done nothing wrong. I don't deserve to be criticised for it. I'm not even going to bother. It's not worth it. I didn't realise until later what the cost was. The cost was that I now had to pretend and perform as if I didn't know, without realising that I was carrying the burden of keeping the secret. It also didn't do our relationship any good, because from this point on I was hypervigilant. Whenever she was in the room, I would check where she was, think about what I said, think about how I said it, because I was having to undo the damage that she thought I was rude. It was actually quite draining. Story 3 is different again. This is about a really great project that came up. It was exciting, high profile, and everything in my head said, yes, you've got to say yes. But there's also a niggle. There's things they want me to do that aren't really my primary skill set, that push me out of my comfort zone, which is okay, but it felt like a really big stretch given the time frame. There was a conflict that needed to be resolved by clarifying of expectations and setting of boundaries, but I didn't do it. Why didn't I do it? Because I didn't want the conflict, because it sounded exciting, it sounded good, I didn't want to lose the opportunity. I also thought there was an expectation that I would say yes, because people should be pleased to receive this kind of opportunity. I felt an obligation to be this person. And yes, of course, there was a cost. The cost was I was absolutely exhausted. I was tired. I started resenting taking the project on at all. I started feeling uncomfortable with people because it was too late to push back. So they just assumed they could keep coming and I had to keep saying yes. Otherwise, I would be going back on what I'd committed to. I felt like a prisoner in my own commitment. which is often the case when people are trying to please others and say yes when they don't really mean it. So what are the lessons? The lessons is conflict comes in many different shapes and sizes. Not all conflict is somebody coming up to you and being a bit of a bully. Not all conflict is about differences of opinion. Not all conflict comes at you head on. And some conflict you actually generate with the best of intentions and almost with enthusiasm because it seems like a good idea. But regardless how the conflict comes about, if you don't tackle it, it doesn't disappear. It either goes underground, niggles at you over time, or erodes the relationship because there are things that need to be said. People often tell themselves that they are protecting themselves when they don't face into conflict. After all, if conflict is about striking together and being uncomfortable, by not engaging in the conflict, they are making themselves more comfortable, but it's not true. And I think the biggest thing people miss when they avoid conflict with other people is that what they're actually doing is generating conflict inside themselves. So when that person walks away, the conflict doesn't walk away. The person might be gone, but the conflict continues to exist inside you. If conflict avoidance is on your radar, there are some key things you need to think about. Number one, what are the conflict situations that you are avoiding? Is there a pattern to the sorts of things that you try to get out of? What are your excuses? What are your avoidance tactics? What are the reasons you're telling yourself why you don't want to lean into that conflict? And then what is the cost to you, to your relationships, to your business, to your family, to your life, to your health? There will always be a cost. The immediate win might be not feeling uncomfortable, but what are the long-term implications of avoiding this conflict? If you dip into my video library, you'll see there's some information there about giving feedback and some of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to giving feedback. I've also got a video about seeing off a bad relationship once and for all, which is an excellent story to make you think. And if you think this is something you need to get in touch and we can talk about your own brand of confidence when it comes to handling conflict, because it is different for different people.